Alright, this video is going to be about how to make solids and make sure that all of your components are solids when you're done, because if they're not solids, they're not going to print, and we want everything to print. So what I've opened up over here, I'm going to try to just get rid of the stuff that I don't need, is the entity info, which is the very top right hand tool here, or menu, whatever you want to call it. So this is the entity info. So this is going to tell you, if you have something selected, basically what it is. So as we work through this, we're going to pay attention to this over here. So I'm going to create a circle, and what I'm going to try to model is the little kind of cap that goes on the ends of the center bearing that make it easier to hold on to in the fidget spinner. So it's just going to be like a little kind of a hat shaped looking, or a mushroom shaped looking thing. So I'm going to start with the bottom stem that's going to actually go inside the center of the bearing. And the center, I told you all it was 7 millimeters in diameter, and I printed one out 7, it was too small. So I'm going to try 8 millimeters. So half of that would be 4. So I'm going to start off with a 4 millimeter circle. There we go. And let's go ahead and select this and see what it says. So I have a circle that has a radius of 4 millimeters, so a total of 8 millimeter diameter. And this tells me the number of segments. So each circle is actually designed with a number of straight lines. To design something like a perfect circle in a computer doesn't exist, because a computer works in kind of absolutes. And so a perfectly curved line basically is just an infinite number of segments in a circle. So because infinite is too large of a number, the computer has to limit it to a certain number of segments. In this case, we have 24 segments. Now I could increase that if I wanted my circle to look more smooth and not have like visible facets to it. So I'd increase this to, let's say, 150. Well, let's do like 360. That'd be a lot of segments. That's actually too many segments. Because I'm working with a small object, it's not going to want to like make the segments smaller. There's probably a limit to how small they can get. So let me try something like 100. That didn't change either. So let's try 48. So I can get them twice as many. There we go. So that worked. You can tell now I have, it looks like a much smoother circle, but they're actually line segments. Straight line, straight line. It's harder to see the more segments you have. So the more segments you have, the more realistic looking circle you'll have. But in reality, it's just a circle made of a bunch of line segments. Hopefully that makes sense. So you may get a warning if you're trying to make a circle or an arc that is too small for the number of segments. So if the segments are too large and you're trying to create an arc, it gives you that warning, because basically all you can do is make a straight line. You can't make multiple segments because they're too large. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So moving on. I'll move this back to 24 just so you can see the segments. Alright, so this is the first thing that we're going to make, the bottom of kind of the mushroom here. So I want to go ahead and extrude this, or push-pull, and I want to go in a depth of about 3 millimeters. So I'm going to go 3, enter. Alright, now the next thing I want to do is create kind of the top hat portion of the mushroom. So I need a larger circle that extends beyond that boundary. I know my bearing is 22 millimeters, so I want to do less than that to kind of have it inset. So I'm going to do 20 millimeters, which means I have to do a diameter or a radius of 10. So that actually I found that center fairly easily. And I usually try to snap to a radius, either the red or the green. I don't know why, I just do. Let's see, and then let's do 10 millimeters. Alright, so let's see what we got so far. I'm going to select a surface here. Here we got, this is called a face. So I have the face selected right now, that's the inside volume. And then if I select the outside instead, now I have a circle, which is a line. So the line encompasses and defines a surface or a face. When I just created that, there's actually another surface in here from my original shape. That's a face. And then this is a face. And I have a face down here too. So far I have zero solids. I just have line segments that define faces. Now, next thing I want to do is make this taller. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. Oops, I grabbed the wrong thing. So I want to select what I want to pull first. I select this area. Pull this up. And you can see, because I have a defined line here, it's actually cutting the next push-pull, or kind of, I'm somewhat creating a 3D solid, but it's not solid yet. So I am push-pulling this face up, and it's cutting a hole in it because there is a line here. So I want this to be eventually 3 millimeters, but for now I'm going to do 2. And I'll show you why in a minute. Okay, there we go. So at this point, if I wanted to make this whole thing a solid, I could try to do that, selecting all the faces and making a group. And you'll see that this group is just a group. It doesn't say a solid or anything like that. It's just a group of things. The reason for that is you would think that maybe this top part would be a solid and the bottom part would be a solid, and if I selected them separately, they in fact probably would be solids. But because I'm grouping them all together, there's no volume in which both of these objects encompass together. This is its own container, and then at the bottom I have a different container, so they can't be considered the same solid because they don't share any of the same volume. So that's a problem. So just because you have two things that look like solids doesn't mean you can combine them into one solid easily like that. So the best thing to do is, once you have a defined solid region that you want to keep, go ahead and make that a solid. So I'm going to go back. Before I did that, I'm going to select all of this stuff here and go ahead and group this. And here you can see it says solid group. So this portion right here is a solid in its own group. So this cannot be edited unless I intend to. And when I add on to this, it's not going to modify any surfaces. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the same process I did earlier. Create the next part. So I'm going to grab on the center here. It says midpoint. I don't think that's the right one though. Let's see. Let's try it. 10 millimeters. Nope, definitely was not. So sometimes your eyes can play tricks on you, so I like to find the edge of the circle I'm trying to find the center for. Hold down the shift key, make sure I'm still in that circle, and it's really not. It's kind of wanting to go outside the circle. So I'm going to release the shift key again. See if I can't find it. That says center, that's the one. So 10, enter. Let me orbit just to make sure. Yeah, that's what I wanted. Okay, then I wanted to pull that up 2 millimeters, and notice it's not cutting the center out because it's its own face, and that other thing is a solid, so they're not going to interact with each other anymore. So I'm going to go up 2 millimeters, enter. So I want this to be a total of 3 millimeters tall, but I want it to taper down towards the middle. So I'm going to create a circle in the middle and kind of lower that down a little bit. If I can find the center here. Give me that. Oh yeah. So I want this to be about the same as the other center was, which was 4 millimeters. Actually, I'll make it just a little bit smaller, just to be different. So I'm going to do 3, enter. And what I want to do now, instead of push-pulling this circle down, is I'm actually going to try to move it down. So I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So this is actually, this circle is attached to this surface, and if I move it, it's actually going to move the surface down with it. So I'm going to try to use the move tool here, and I'm going to grab it here. Actually, let's try it from the center. I'm going to go along the Z axis, if I can. There we go. See how I can actually pull the surface with the circle? That's what I want to do, and I want to go in a downward direction. And I'm purposely extending it super far so I don't accidentally snap on something else. But then I'm going to define that I only want to go down 1 millimeter. So I'm going to go 1, enter, in that direction. So it sank it down 1 millimeter, and there's a little dip there. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to actually increase the complexity of this one more time. Let's see if I can do that. I may have needed to do this circle before, but we'll see. Actually, yeah. So let's go back. Now that we know kind of how that works, I'm going to make another circle. Let's see if I can find the middle here. That's not what I want. I want a circle. And I want this one to be 1 millimeter less than my total, so I want it to be a 9 radius. Alright, now I can play around with these circles. I'm going to select the center one first and do what I just did with the move tool. Just grab it here. And then I'm going to tap the up arrow to make sure that I'm going in the Z direction. And then I'm going to just orbit to make sure I'm doing the right thing here. I can go up or down. So I'm going to go 1 millimeter down, enter, and then see how it only grabbed it from this line out. So from here to here is flat, and then it starts to dip down right there. So I'm going to go ahead and just make this a little more extreme and grab this center line, or not the center, but the middle circle. And then I'm going to move this one up just slightly, 1 millimeter. We grab it from the center here. And on blue axis, I'm just going to move it up 1. There we go. So now I have like a little divot for my finger to go in, so I can really grip the spinner. Alright, so now I want to make all of this stuff that I just created, all these faces. So these are called surfaces. So I want to combine these surfaces and make a solid. And since there aren't any openings, all I need to do is select all the faces. So when you have a complex thing like this with a lot of different faces, it's easier just to draw a box around it and get rid of what I don't want to include. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a box around all of this just to make sure it's all selected. And then I want to remove this part from the selection. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down and then click on it to get rid of that. So everything else is still selected, so I want to right click and then make group. So now I have 2 solid groups. See, this is a solid group and this is a solid group. And that's what you want to make sure that you have when you're modeling in 3D, is everything a solid group. Then once you have, even if they're separate solids, as long as they're touching each other, you can combine solids. So that's what I want to do next. So I'm going to use this tool, the outer shell, and I'm going to select this solid first and then my second solid. Now they're all combined into one solid group. So it's all one solid. So that's really important when you're modeling in 3D. Make sure that you don't just stop short of having a solid. So you don't want to have just lines and surfaces. Those will not print. You have to have actually solids. So I occasionally like to pull up this menu here and make sure that the objects that I'm making end up being solids. And then another way to tell is if you select a solid editing tool and it gives you a warning up here that one of your entities is not a solid, then that means you got something wrong there. So this week our goal is to get our two-dimensional fidget spinners into three-dimensional solids. So this will be a video that will be helpful to you. I'm assigning this for Monday, and then I also put some resources on the Google Classroom, some other videos of my process, just to give you an example of kind of how to work from 2D to 3D in SketchUp. And as always, if you have any questions, you can join me on the Zoom chat, and I'd be glad to help you.